Hello there, lovely folks of YouTube. Ren here. I am doing my best to shoot this around the guys who are doing some work with power tools in the yard behind me. So anyway, I wanted to talk about strawberries today. This is what I have growing next to me. Strawberries are plants in the Fragaria species, usually hybrids. Though you can sometimes find Fragaria vesca, which is the European wild strawberry available. They are perennials. They're grown in zones 3 to 10. They love full sun, at least 6 hours. Mine do get some shade in the morning from my shed being here on the east side of them, but they do get sun most of the day. They do prefer a loamy or sandy soil. So if you have clay, like I do, you do want to heavily amend your soil with some compost in order to enhance their growth. Now, there are 3 primary types of strawberries that you can buy commercially for fruit production. There's the June-bearing, the ever-bearing, and what's the third one? Day-neutral. The June-bearing strawberries are this one right here that I have. A June-bearing strawberry will bear a single heavy crop of fruit once in the late spring, early summer. Typically June in a lot of strawberry growing places. I get strawberries in May here because I'm a little further south, hence the name June-bearing. Now an ever-bearing strawberry will still bear a pretty large late spring crop. Some of these that I have here, the smaller ones, are actually ever-bearing, but they will then sporadically flower and fruit throughout the rest of the year, usually making a smaller crop in the fall, and in addition to the larger crop in the spring. However, they usually don't make as much fruit as the June-bearing ones. The third type, the day-neutral strawberries, will fruit all throughout the year as long as the temperature is within a certain range, which I've never seen these strawberries personally. I had to write this down. It's between 40 and 75 degrees. So as long as the temperature is within those ranges, it will bear fruit. However, it does tend to bear less fruit overall than both of the other types of strawberries. So most people tend to grow the June-bearing strawberries and just get the one big bumper crop in the year. But some people like to just periodically pick strawberries. It's fine if you just like to snack on strawberries periodically, but if you actually want to have enough strawberries to make something like jam, you're probably going to want to stay with the June-bearing strawberries. So, strawberries can be grown from seed, but it tends to be difficult. Most of the time it's just much easier to buy the pre-planted crowns, or bare root even. Sometimes they will be sold. When you do transplant strawberry plants, you want to make sure that they are planted at the exact same soil level as when you got them. So take some care in planting those. Now the common advice when you're transplanting strawberries is to actually remove all the flowers the first year. Don't get any fruit out of them at all, and let them produce these little runners. I don't have any runners right now, of course, because it's not the appropriate time of year for runners, but strawberries will make little runners, which are basically like long stems that will stretch out from the base of the plant, and when they touch down on soil, they will actually generate a new plant there. That's how the plant primarily propagates itself. And they usually recommend that you discourage the plant from making fruit in order to encourage it to make runners and spread the first year. Whether you follow that advice, of course, is up to you. I did not, and my strawberries turned out fine. It may have taken a little bit longer for them to get established, but they did fine. So there's your little food for thought there. Pest-wise, honestly, the most common pest for these is slugs. Slugs love strawberries. Now, you can usually deter slugs by just putting stuff around them that they don't like. Pine needles is a really common deterrent for slugs. They don't like all the spininess of the pine needles. And pine needles do tend to acidify the soil a little bit, which strawberries like as well. So pine needle mulch is a great way to not only help to encourage the growth of your strawberries and keep their soil nice and moist and, you know, break down into nice rich soil for them, but also helps to deter the slugs. The other good way to deter slugs that I have found, my personal favorite, is a beer bowl. It's literally, you just put out like an old can or even like bottle caps or something with beer, pour some beer into it. Slugs love beer. They will crawl into the beer and drown themselves. You then have to go out and dump out dead slugs in the morning, but it's a great way to keep the slugs away from your strawberries. So the other major pest that I have problems with is birds. Birds will just love to eat strawberries. Now, one of the tools that I use to it somewhat helps. Let me see if I can find one. This right here. This is a strawberry stone. It's literally a rock that I've painted to look like a strawberry. And I lay it out here amongst my strawberries, usually just before the strawberries actually start to turn red. Birds will see that red stone, think it's a strawberry, go to peck at it and go, ooh, I don't like that. That doesn't work. And it kind of teaches them that the red things that you peck here aren't always going to be food, and they tend to spend less time looking through your strawberry bed. It's not 100% deterrent though. The other deterrent you really need to do is bird netting. And one of the reasons I wanted to film this now, just before my strawberries turn red, is because I will be putting bird netting down. Let's take a closer look at the plant and we'll talk some more about how to take care of it. Alright, so here you can get a close-up on this little strawberry right here. That has slug damage on it. So you can see I need to start putting some beer out. I don't actually have any beer in the house, so I need to rectify that. This one right here, with a giant chunk taken out of it, and there's a little bit of glare, so it's hard for me to see. That is birds. Birds have just eaten all the red parts of that one. So definitely needs the bird netting and needs the slug protection. So you can see strawberries have this really cool trifoliate leaf on it. It's pretty distinctive leaf shape with the serrated edges on it. Generally only plants in the same family as strawberry have this sort of leaf to it, so it makes it pretty easy to identify even in the wild. Now there is another plant that looks a lot like this. Here locally we call it snakeberry. False strawberry is also one of the names of it. It is in the strawberry family. It does make little red fruits that look like strawberries. They do not taste like strawberries. They're not dangerous to eat, they're just not palatable. I've eaten them. They taste like styrofoam to me. Wet styrofoam. But they do also like the same conditions that strawberries like, so you need to watch out for them setting up in your strawberry beds, because strawberries do need a lot of weeding. Other plants will outcompete them, and that includes the false strawberries, so you need to make sure you weed those out. Number one best way to identify them is that the false strawberries will make yellow flowers, whereas the true strawberries make white flowers. So, as I mentioned, you know, the strawberries do need a lot of pretty consistent weeding in order to keep them happy and healthy and make sure they're not outcompeted with other plants. You can see I need to come through and weed. Again, I have some grass that's starting to pop up in my bed, and I think there's a couple of plantains in there as well. The other thing you got to watch out for is that the plants are pretty shallow rooted, like they're not really deep into the ground. And particularly the way that they propagate is they basically just sort of skim the surface and just barely set some roots down at a new location. Because of that, they're very susceptible to frost heave. So mulching in the wintertime is especially important. And again, pine needles are a great option for mulching these things. So if you have a pine tree nearby, go ahead and plant some pine needles. Strawberries do make a good companion plant for a lot of taller plants in the garden. I'm actually planning on moving some strawberries into my asparagus bed once I get that asparagus reestablished, because the strawberries kind of grow underneath the asparagus and they'll do well there. However, make sure that you don't plant strawberries near any Solanaceae plants. That would be your tomatoes, your eggplants, your peppers, anything of that sort, as well as some of the other, you know, nightshade family plants. They will share amongst themselves a virus called verticillium wilt, and it'll kill both your strawberries and your tomatoes, so try to keep them separate in order to reduce the risk of that spread. So, I know, I just love these little things. So let's talk about some of the magical properties of this plant. Obviously, strawberries, very, very, very heavily associated with Venus, water element, and love magic. It kind of makes sense, you know? I mean, you look at the fruit. They're sweet, they're red, they're heart-shaped, and even now, people who don't have any magical inclinations still tend to think of this as a very a fruit that's very much tied in with the concept of love. Think about how chocolate-covered strawberries are like um, the de facto gift of Valentine's Day for loved ones. So yes, strawberries very, very heavily tied in with love magic. Doesn't necessarily have to be love for another person. It can be welcoming love into your life. It can be self-love. It can be strengthening the bonds of love that you already have with an established partner. All of those things are things that strawberries are good for. Now, strawberries are also considered to be a good fruit for offerings for the Fae. Strawberries were very commonly given in a lot of European places in Europe, given as offerings to the Fae to kind of like buy yourselves out of trouble. I know that strawberries were typically put out at midsummer for, Midsummer's Night as offerings to the Fae in a lot of places in Ireland. In Germany, baskets of strawberries would be tied to the horns of cows as an offering to the Fae in order to make sure that the Fae wouldn't turn the butter or steal the butter from the cows. So yeah, there's a lot of connections between strawberries and Fae there as well. So that's also something that you could exploit if that's a line of interest that you would like to follow. And then of course finally there's a little bit of folklore as well, which again ties into sort of Venus fertility aspects. There's a bit of folklore, sorry, my notes are kind of blowing everywhere, saying that you can take the strawberry leaves, and if they were carried in the pockets of a pregnant woman, that they would help to protect her from the pains of pregnancy. So that's another thing that you can add to your little repertoire there. Interesting thing about the strawberry leaves is the strawberry leaves are, I mean, they're edible. They're kind of tough and fibrous, but they can be eaten. And primarily, they're actually used as a good additive for tea. They don't necessarily have a strong strawberry flavor to them, but they are pleasant in their own right and safe to be drunk in tea. So even if you don't necessarily get a whole lot of strawberries out of your strawberry bed, you can still pick some of the leaves and dry them to use for your teas. So, and then of course, you know, the strawberry leaves magically can be used for a lot of the similar associations as the fruit. But yeah, nice little plant. Obviously a very popular plant. I don't know many people who don't like strawberries, excepting of course those people who are allergic. If you are allergic to strawberries, then probably want to avoid this plant. But otherwise, you know, I mean, it's been one of my favorites since childhood. I grew up eating strawberries dipped in sugar. It was my favorite dessert, especially if they were from sugar. And we're back at it again. Anyway, hope this video finds you well, and I will see you again soon.